Hi everybody and welcome to our free GREVerbal webinar. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Andrew and I am one of the GRE advisors here at Ready4. What that means is that I consult with our students, I connect many of them with courses, and I'm also going to be the host of today's webinar. So let's get started. I'm going to begin by talking a little bit about Ready4 for those of you who aren't familiar with us. Then I'm going to pass things over and you're going to see one of the lessons of our expert instructor, Sarah. She will start with the GRE overview before digging into some main idea questions to help you all boost your reading comprehension scores. At the end, I'll jump back on and answer some questions from all of you. So take a minute now and find the question box in your webinar side panel. This is going to be definitely your friend today. Any questions that you have about Sarah's lesson, any questions about the GRE in general, or questions about our courses, you can type them all right into the question box. Also, when it's time for you to cast your vote by answering some of the examples that Sarah is going to go over, you're going to type your answer right into the question box as well. This is going to be an interactive session, so make sure you guys take advantage of us here. Okay, a little bit about Ready4. Our company is based in Boston, Massachusetts. We were started out of MIT when our founder, Alad Shushan, was earning his MBA at MIT's Sloan School of Management. And we've maintained close ties with the people over there at MIT. Back in 2013 when we started, our goal was to bring test prep into the 21st century, making test success both more affordable and more accessible to students. Now with over 50,000 5-star reviews in the app stores, we're consistently ranked #1 among test prep apps. We've helped over 600,000 students prepare for the GRE just in the past few years. We're now known as the mobile test prep company, and that's something we're really proud of, jumping ahead of other companies like Kaplan and Princeton Review that have been around for a long time. Today we have 12 apps in the Android and iOS stores. We've been used by more than 2 million students to prepare for tests like the GRE, the GMAT, and the SAT. And our apps have been very effective. On average, our GRE users are gaining 15 points studying with us. But we've learned that many students need more than just a mobile app to prepare for the test, because there's no substitute for a live experience with a talented teacher. And that's what you're going to get a taste of today, a little bit of the power of our live course. So speaking of our courses, our session today is going to be led by Sarah. Sarah is a very successful instructor with our students. She has 99 percentile scores on the GMAT and the GRE. She's spent more than 2,000 hours helping students prepare for this test, and she gets really great ratings from her students. So if you enjoyed today's session and you want to hear more about our courses, feel free to stay after towards the end. I'll talk more about them. Sarah leads all of our hybrid courses, and she also leads some of our live courses. If you have any questions about anything, if there's anything I could help you with during the session today, just let me know. Type it right into the question box. Other than that, I'm going to pass things over now so we can get started. Good luck, everyone. Let me know how I could help. Thanks.
Hi, everybody. My name's Sarah. I'm teaching this upcoming GRE class and one of the ongoing quant ones right now. And thanks for joining us on this Sunday morning or Sunday evening or afternoon, depending on where you are calling in from the world. So one thing that I wanted to do, just to make sure that we understand how this question box works, is if you could please type in where you are calling in from today. I'm calling in from Texas. I live on the Texas-Oklahoma border in the United States. But just to prove to you that this whole checkbox thing does work, please go ahead and call in. Justin Friedman's back from Buffalo, although it could be a different one, I suppose. It's a pretty common name. We got, let's see, Bettina from Florida, Kevin from Houston, love Houston, used to live there. San Diego, Michael's from San Diego. Cora's coming from India, Rebecca from Oregon, Nike, cool name, Nike's calling from New York, Renisha from Birmingham, Jacob from BK. I'm trying to think what that is. BK? Okay, yeah, so Justin, oh, good, it's the same Justin. I was going to say, I think I actually know a few Justin Friedmans in my own life, so there's got to be a lot of them out there. Oh, okay, somebody calling in from Troy, Michigan. Okay, cool. Well, once again, we've got this kind of weird lighting effect going on right now that I will try to fix in just a second. But let's get started with the content of this course. And hopefully I'll get the camera looking better in just a minute. All right, so the GRE. A few things to know about the GRE. Oh gosh, there's the big picture of me. I'm going to skip that slide. So the few things to know about the GRE is it is an extremely long test. It's 3 hours and 45 minutes long. That means that you have to be prepared for something that is an exercise not only in skill but also in stamina. It's also a very expensive test. It costs $205 to take the GRE. So that means two different things for you. One of them, well, both of them amount to the fact that you don't want to take the test more than once. So if you're considering whether or not to just take it and see how you do, or whether or not to spend money on test prep, consider that it costs $205 to retake the test if you're not happy with your score, and it's also a painful experience. So if you're thinking of maybe spending a little extra time and getting a little more prepared before you take it the first time, it's probably not a bad idea. You'll probably save yourself some anguish if you do that. So, so there's that. You can take the GRE on any day but Sunday and holidays, so you couldn't take it today. And the analytical writing section, which is the essay, that's the part that very few schools care about. That comes first. You get 2 essays, 30 minutes each. So this is an hour of essay writing before the really important part of the test even starts. After that, the sections can appear in any order. There's 2 verbal sections and 2 quant sections, and then there's an experimental or research section. That means there's a 5th section that they're going to give you that doesn't even count towards your score. Now, they don't tell you which section that is because, why don't they tell you which is the research or experimental section? What do you think? Looking for answers here, folks. It's going to be a long morning if nobody's answering. Why do they not tell you which is the research or experimental section? Yeah, exactly, Bettina. Yeah, it's because they want you to take it seriously. If you knew it didn't count, then you wouldn't try. And they use those sections to research future editions of the test, to test out questions. So in the end, it's good because it makes sure that the questions you get on the test are fair. They've been tested many, many times before you see them as part of your actual exam. But it stinks for you because it just makes the test another 30 minutes longer, or 35 minutes. Okay, so here again, this is how the time breaks down. You take your essay first. There are 2 of those. They're 30 minutes each. There's an issues essay and an arguments essay. They're different. They're extremely similar and very formulaic. And you've got 2 of them. And you're scored from 0 to 6 on that. This is an independent score that doesn't influence the other GRE score, like the score that you're used to thinking about in the 130 to 170 range. This is something totally different. It doesn't get added on. The verbal reasoning and quant sections, you get 20 questions per section. In the verbal, you get 30 minutes a task. That means you get 1:30 per question. In quant, you get a little bit more than that. You get like 1:40 per question in the quant section. That's not to say that they just give you the 30 minutes and you can allot that time how you wish. So if you want to spend 10 minutes on one question, you can. It's just we highly discourage you to do that. Okay. So today, while we're doing practices, I will be using my stopwatch to time you, to give you sort of an appropriate sense of what the pacing of this test will be, because that is one of the most important things you can practice, is just be ready for the speed. Okay, moving on from there. So in the end, you've answered 90 questions, you've been there for nearly 4 hours, and you get a score that's somewhere in the 260 to 340 range. That's adding up your verbal and quant. To give you an idea of what that means, here's a graph to show you how the scores are distributed. A 50th percentile score is about a 151 in verbal and a 152 for math. So if you score a 151 verbal or a 152 in math, you have done better than 50% of people who take this test. If you want to score up in the 160s, by contrast, that means that you're scoring better than about 90% of people who take the test. So keep these numbers in mind when you decide what score you're aiming for. And the programs that you're applying to will probably have information on what the typical scores are for people that they accept. So you can look into that specifically. A lot of times we'll get a question like, what's a good score? It entirely depends on the kind of program you're applying to. So, but a score in the 160s is a pretty good score for any program. So this is the score distribution. Another question for you. Why is it that the math scores are higher? Justin, you know the answer to this. Oh, Renisha, I think, yeah, Renisha, you've been here before too, so Renisha knows the answer. Why is it that the math scores are higher? Yes, Michael, I don't know where you're calling from, Michael, but Michael is correct. Justin, yep, it's correct. It's because it's an international exam. So people take the GRE from all over the world. They're competing on a level playing field as far as math goes. Although we may argue that the math in the United States is probably inferior to many other countries in the world, but be that as it may, in theory, we're all competing in the same math. The pool of people who have been speaking English their whole lives is much smaller, and therefore the verbal section is a little bit less competitive. It's easier to be in the 90th percentile in verbal because there's less native English speaking people who take it. So that is why the math is it's a little harder to score highly in math. Okay, so from here, it gets into what is the computer adaptive nature of this test. And from this, we will test out one of the other features of this GoToMeeting interface that you're using. I'm going to put up a poll on the screen here. It's just going to say yes or no. That's it. Just going to say yes or no. And what I'd like you to do is answer the question, do you know what the computer adaptive testing means on the GRE? Do you know what that means? And what I see on my screen, I don't see who answers what, but I do see how many of you have voted. Like now 53% of you, 56% of you, 62% of you, there's about 40 of you in the class right now, just so you know. So there's 65% of you, 2/3. And what I see is a running tally of how many yeses and how many nos there are, but I have no idea who's answering what. I tell you this because you should never be ashamed. When I put up questions later on that are actual GRE type questions, never be ashamed to answer the question because I won't know if you got it right or wrong. Only you will know if you got it right or wrong. And also, answers tend to stick much better in your brain if you actually commit and then get it wrong than if you kind of wait and see what the answer is. So cool. So 3/4 of you voted. I'm going to close the poll and share the results so that you can see. About 2/3 of you understand how the adaptation works, and about 1/3 of you do not know yet, but now you will. So the GRE is different than the GMAT or some other exams. It adapts section by section. So what that means is for the verbal section, because we're doing verbal today, you will get a medium difficulty verbal section. That will be the first one that you get. Now, if you do poorly on that one, your second section will be an easy verbal, because they figure you need easier questions. If you do well, you will get a hard verbal. Okay. In order to do well on this test, you not only need to get lots of questions right, you need to get the hard section. If you get a bunch of questions wrong in the first section, and then they funnel you down to the easier section, there's no way to recoup that and still get a high score. So you have to do well in section 1 so that you get the hard section 2, and then also answer a lot of questions correctly in section 2. And this is true for the quant as well. I just used the verbal because that's what we're doing today. Okay. Yeah, questions on how this works. So what we can deduce from this is that, first off, your score counts not only how many questions you got right, but how difficult they were, whether you got the hard section or not. You do not ever want to leave a question blank because there's no penalty for guessing. And even if you just guessed randomly, you have a 1 in 5 chance of getting it right, or 1 in 4, depending on the type of question. If you don't guess at all, you have a 0% chance of getting it right. So you should always guess. You also need to practice every question type because you want to make sure that you can answer whatever they throw at you in that first section. Okay. Yeah, cool. So moving on from there. Oh, here we got a question for Justin. What do you think is the highest you can get if you get the easy second part? I don't know the answer to that. People have asked me that before. I don't actually know. I would guess somewhere around 50th percentile, but I don't know. Yep. Okay, so we leave time at the end of the section so that, okay, so the other thing that's a little bit different about the GRE than some of the other tests is you do have access to the entire section and you can skip forward and back. Like if you don't like a question, you can skip it and go to the next one and then come back. So what you should be doing is what they say, take the test twice. And what I mean by that is do the easy questions first, okay? And if you meet any resistance, easy first. If you meet any resistance, just skip it. Then go back for the hard ones, okay? The reason we do that is because what you don't want to do is burn all your time working through hard questions at the beginning. And then you get to the end and you find out that the last 3 questions in the section were really easy if you only had like 15 seconds to do them. Okay, so it's important to do all the easy ones. You have to see every question on the test. You don't want to be in a position of just having to guess randomly at the end. So take all the easy ones and then go back into the hard ones. Okay. Ignore the apparent difficulty. Once you're in there, whether you got the easy section or the hard section, it's too late. So don't stress out about it. Just do the best you can with the test that's in front of you. And then finally, practice with the right tools and content. So as you can see, there is there's some specialness to this test. It's important that you're practicing with actual GRE exams, full-length exams, so they get used to the length of the test. And also the correct question types, because there are a few unique question types on the GRE. In the math section, it's the quantitative comparisons, which comprise about a half of the test. In the verbal section, you have text completions and sentence equivalencies, and those are different. Those are both fill-in-the-blank style questions, but they are unique to the GRE. So the only way you can practice them is to use GRE questions, okay? So that's why you want to be practicing with the right tools, take full-length tests. There's some from the ETS, and then Ready4 has several of them too. So yeah, let's see. We got some questions coming up here. Are we allowed to bring any materials other than, you can't bring anything, Jillian. It's almost like you're going into prison. Like you have to empty your pockets. You don't get anything. They give you a pencil and paper. You can't bring your phone. I once had to get a drug test for work. I worked at an oil company, and it's kind of the same deal where they like lock everything in a safe and you go in basically naked, and then, you know, it's that experience. Nope, I don't think you can bring water. I don't think you can bring anything. You can take breaks. There are breaks in between each section, but you don't bring anything in. Okay. There's less stuff to forget. That's the good news. Okay. Master main idea questions. So we're going to look at main idea questions today. The reason for that is, and please go ahead and keep funneling these questions in here, and I will get to them as we can. So the reason we're going to do main idea questions is because in reading comprehension, pretty much every passage you get will have a main idea question at the end of it. Okay. Main idea questions. Yeah, we'll get to that in a second. But main idea questions are take a lot of different, very recognizable forms. Like the author's primary purpose in doing this is those types of things. Anyway, so there's a few different things about the reading comprehension section that are worth noting. You can have all of these different styles of questions. And like I said, the GRE has very specific question types. You can have multiple choice where you select one. You can have multiple choice where you select 2 or more. You can have the weirdest type, which is where you select in the passage. So you actually take the cursor on the screen and you highlight the phrase that you think is the answer to the question, okay? So you want to get used to these 3 different styles of questions and just read the directions. Make sure that if it's select more than one, that you select, that you know that when you answer your question. Okay, so a few things about these passages. You're probably familiar with some of them, having read a few of them. They present an overwhelming amount of information. They will often make conclusions or analyses based on the information. In other words, the author will have an opinion. It will be persuasive rather than expository. So this means that the author has an opinion on the material. Okay. It may present multiple points of view on the information. This usually increases the difficulty. The thing that makes a GRE passage difficult or not difficult is not the vocabulary. The thing that makes it difficult is that it will present multiple points of view. Okay, so the simple ones are one point of view, the harder ones are multiple points of view, and you have to keep track of all of those. Okay, and then finally, they'll be written in a difficult or confusing way. Nobody is going for clarity here. They're giving you things that are just difficult and confusing, because that's what graduate school texts are like. So that's the story. And the analogy that I always have heard, that I heard once, that I always like to give you, is that taking a GRE reading comprehension passage is like going into a lecture in a college class that is a subject you don't know anything about. So you go into a completely random lecture in a discipline that you don't study, you listen for 10 minutes, and then you come out and somebody asks you a whole bunch of questions about what they were talking about. You're like, well, I don't really know what they were talking about. I maybe got a few glimmers of understanding. And that's kind of how it feels to read a GRE passage, I think. Now, that being said, outside knowledge of GRE topics generally hurts your chances. You have to understand that the GRE passages are written with the assumption that you bring no outside knowledge, okay? So it's very rare for people to err on the side of being too detailed. More often what people will do is make an inference that is not actually in the passage. And even when they ask you to make an inference, what can you infer from? You're not going to infer. You're going to stick very, very close to what is in the passage. You are going to pretend that you are a robot with no capacity for outside thinking, and you are just going to answer based on what is in the passage before you. You can understand then why, if you're reading about the Kuiper Belt, it's really hard, and you are an astronomy major, it's really hard to erase everything that you ever learned about the Kuiper Belt. Whereas for somebody like me, who knows nothing about the Kuiper Belt, it would be much easier to stick to the text. Okay, yeah, so with the main idea passages, like I said, pretty much every passage will have one. When you are reading the passage, another question I get all the time is, do I read the questions first? No, you don't read the questions first. You read the passage only with enough detail to understand the main idea, okay? And if you need more information, you'll go back and read details and stuff. The reason I say this is because if you read the questions in advance, how well do you really remember the questions? I don't remember the questions. So it's a waste of time, okay? Also, to read it in detail the whole time, to read the passage in detail the first time through is a waste of time, because there's all this extra detailed information that you just don't need. It's full of all kinds of extraneous words that you don't need, okay? So the best strategy is to read the passage only well enough to get the main points. Just the main points, that's all we care about. We don't need to remember every detail. The way that we are going to keep track of the main idea is we are going to read the intro very carefully. If there are multiple body paragraphs, we're going to read the topic sentences. That's the first sentence. Okay. Topic sentences. And then we're going to read the conclusion, which may be a whole paragraph. It could be maybe a whole paragraph, or it could just be like last 2 to 3 sentences. Okay, that's what, so read the intro in detail, the topic sentences, and then the last 2 to 3 sentences. Okay, now sometimes you get a passage of just one paragraph, but in general the idea is the most important stuff is at the top. You want to pay a lot of attention to the beginning, then it kind of fades into a bunch of details, and then the conclusion, they'll usually come back to what their point was. Okay, the body paragraphs in the middle, if you have the ability to, it's a good idea to make a couple notes based on your topic sentence. Write like on your scratch paper, what was that paragraph about? That can be very helpful, because then if you do have to go back and look for detailed information, you know where to look. Okay, so again, intro, topic sentences, conclusion. And that should be enough to get you the main idea. Okay, cool. So we have 2 passages here. Okay, good. 2 passages here. Has both of them on one page. I'm moving to the split page. So what I would like you to do here is take 1.5 minutes. Remember, that's the magic word for verbal. We have 1.5 minutes to read this and tell me, what is the author's point? Okay, so 1.5 minutes. Type into the question box when you're done, what's the author's point? Your time starts now. Okay, that's a minute. You have 30 seconds. Okay, that's a minute 30. Now let me start pasting some answers here. We got a lot of folks answering. That's great. I have a question about the amount of scratch paper. They provide you unlimited scratch paper. You just put up your hand. They pay somebody like, $7 an hour to sit there and harass you about what's in your pockets. So they'll keep bringing you scratch paper. Okay, so let's see. I'm gonna paste in some of the answers that people have here. Okay. Okay. So we have a lot of agreement here. Okay, so pretty much everybody agrees that this is a passage about parakeets eating out of zinc bowls dye, right? There's one that is a little bit different here that I see. And I'm sorry if I've skimmed over all of them. There's a bunch of them coming in, but this one here is a little bit different. Reduction of zinc-coated bowls. Okay, and I would say that what many of you have given me is the subject of the passage, which is correct, okay? You've given me that this is a passage about parakeets dying from zinc bowls. What is the author's point, though? That's a little bit different. The author's point is why. Why did the author write this? Did the author write this to describe the phenomenon? The author has an axe to grind. It has the word should in it, right? Should dramatically reduce the frequency of premature death among pet parakeets. So what I would actually add to most of these is I would add something about should should get rid of zinc bowls because zinc-coated bowls are causing parakeet deaths, okay? So we want to keep in mind not just what's the subject of it, but what is the author's point and why did they write this? The reason I say this is because a lot of the questions involve the author's point of view or the author's purpose, okay? So we want to be a little bit more attentive to what the author wanted, why did they went to the trouble of writing this paragraph, okay? So here's an example of one that has just one point of view, right? There's only one point of view here. The author thinks you should get rid of zinc bowls because zinc bowls cause parakeet deaths. And they don't even introduce any other characters or actors in this passage. In the next one, we have an example of, this is a very GRE type of passage. We have a few different points of view that come up. We have a couple of different literary critics, and then we have the author. So we're still going to, though, come up with what was the author's point when he wrote this, okay? Or she. So with this one, it's a little bit harder. I'm going to give you 2 minutes. And at the end of 2 minutes, please type into your question box what you think the point is. What is the author's purpose? Okay, and let's see, your time starts now. That's a minute. You have a minute left. Okay, we're at 2 minutes. Let's see. I know usually people are like, oh, and this one's quite a bit more challenging. Okay. So here we got, I'm just going to start putting up the answers that we have from people. Anything else? Anything else? Well, let's look at our first sentence first off. We know we're talking about the invisible man. Okay, so again, with one of these, how do we read for the point? Well, I'm going to read the first sentence, and then I'm going to read the last couple sentences, okay? And we'll see what we can come up with there. Okay, so starting at, again, focus mainly on the very beginning of the passage. In The Invisible Man, Ralph Ellison does not reject the folk and oratorical traditions of Black culture in the U.S. Instead, he intertwines them with its narrative, even as he finds additional inspiration in more traditional Western literature. Boy, that's a lot of words. You know what, though? All we really care about from this first sentence is we're talking about Ralph Ellison and The Invisible Man. Invisible Man. He does not reject the traditions of Black culture in the U.S. Instead, he intertwines them with narrative, as he finds. Okay, so Invisible Man doesn't reject Black culture. He intertwines it with traditional literature. Okay, cool. That's the first sentence. There's no topic sentences. This is relatively short. And so now I'm just going to kind of skip down to the end here and look at the end as well. But the novel's layering of voices is no more undisciplined than Dostoevsky's characters' engagements with velocity, or even the solo and small group interludes characteristic of jazz and blues performances. Okay, very, very typical Jerry. They're like, what are they even talking about? They're making allusions to like culture and Dostoevsky, okay, a famous Russian writer. But what we can come away with from this last sentence is the idea of, does the author like this book or not? What do you think? Again, we want the author's purpose. Did they write this passage to tell us how great the Invisible Man is? To tell us how bad the Invisible Man is? What kind of sense do we have here? What was his point? Justin says he likes it. Yeah, Bettina says he likes it. Yeah, I agree. This author likes this book. Okay. Author thinks it's a good book. Okay. So yeah, I would say that what's the primary point of this passage? Gosh, there's a lot of junk in here, but it's the author saying the Invisible Man doesn't reject Black culture, he intertwines with traditional literature, and the author thinks it's a good book. That's it. That's it. Easy, right? There's a bunch of other stuff in here. He mentions Dunhart and Prescott, which are two different critics that have different opinions. But notice how I didn't even read the middle of the passage. I just read the first sentence and the last sentence. And it's a lot less confusing when you do that. Okay, we can go back for these questions later in subsequent, in subsequent questions when they ask, what is Dunhart's opinion? What is Prescott's opinion? Fine, we'll go back for that. But don't get bogged down with it right away, because it just clouds the point. The point is always going to be in the very beginning and at the end. Okay. Cool. So that's the Invisible Man passage. All right. So moving on from there. Main idea questions. Okay. Yeah. So okay. It identifies the author's primary purpose or concern. We did that. The correct answer will offer the best, but not necessarily an ideal summary of the passage. Okay. So yes. You might not like the answer. That's okay. When you write the GRE someday, you can have different answers, but you're just going to have to pick the least objectionable answer. It'll be the description of the author's purpose, and the best answer will apply to the whole passage. So that's another thing I want to bring up. The other reason to read the introduction carefully and the conclusion and kind of wash over the middle is because if you find an answer choice that you like, but it's only mentioned in paragraph 2, that's not the answer, okay? The main idea will always have something to do with the first paragraph, okay? So it's in the second and third. If it doesn't come up till the third paragraph, that's not your answer. Don't pick it. Okay, yeah, we talked about those. All right, so here is our first GRE style one. At the end of this, So I'm going to give you 2 minutes to read this, okay, and come up with an answer. Actually, no, we'll do 2 minutes because it's our first one. And at the end of that, I'm going to put up one of those polls again, but it's just going to say A, B, C, D, E rather than yes or no, okay? So when I put up the poll, please make a mental note of which letter you want to vote for, and then vote for that letter. And I will tell you how I get to the answer at the end of it, okay? So you've got, so let's make it 1:45. That should be enough. You got 1:45, and your time starts now. Okay, you have 30 seconds. Okay, I'm going to launch the poll. So decide what you want, A, B, C, D, or E. All right, so let's see, we've got answers flooding in here, okay? No, hey, hold on. Hold on, sorry, that was the wrong poll. My apologies. Where'd the poll go? Sorry about this, hold on. There we go, launch that poll. Now you can choose A, B, C, D, or E, I apologize. Okay, so we got 2/3 you voting, 3/4 of you voting. Okay, I usually like to get above 80% participation before moving on. Okay, we're at 82, cool. I'm gonna close the poll, share the results. You can see that we got votes for every possible answer here. If you're in the group that picked B, good for you. The answer to this one is B. So let's talk about why it's B. So again, we're gonna look at the introduction here. Look at the top of the page. Since Earth's moon is not quite round like most other moons, something must have occurred during its initial formation to result in its non-centered mass and highly varied topography. Okay, again, we're starting to get into non-centered mass, highly varied topography. That's getting a little too detailed for my taste. I'm going to try to keep it simple and say this is about moon's shape. Moon, not round like other moons. Something happened. Okay, that's what this is about. But I'm just going to check by going down to the end here and read a couple sentences at the down here. Complex gravitational interactions between Earth and Moon resulted in uneven cooling of the nascent satellite. And something about gravity. Something about Earth-Moon gravity. Such a scenario would also call for gradual reorientation of its axis to the present angle from an original axis with a difference of about 36 degrees, a shift concurrent with its shape change. Okay, so that would mean that the axis would be in a different place, but I don't think that actually follows up on what we said in the beginning. So I'm going to stick with just what we saw in the first sentence and under more plausibly. Okay, so we're looking for something about moon not round like other moons because something happened, something about Earth-Moon gravity. Okay, all right, so going through our choices here, the least popular answer was E, resolving a debate about moon's shape prior to the formation of its craters. Okay, the problem here is, well, there's a few, but prior to the formation of its craters. First off, it's not telling us when it formed with respect to the craters. The second part is that it's not really resolving a debate. Okay, it isn't going into these are the strengths of this theory and these are the strengths of this theory. And so resolving a debate, it's not really doing that. And this should introduce you to a technique for these questions, which is very often the answer is contained in just a few words, just the first few words. Okay. Okay. And so I'm going to say that it's not resolving a debate about anything in this passage. So I'm going to cross that one out. For the same reason, D, resolving a debate about the existence of a shift in the moon's polar axis. Also not resolving a debate, and it mentions polar axis, which doesn't even get brought up until the very end. So it's not brought up in the beginning, it's not the answer. So D and E are out. C, determining the extent to which a second moon is responsible for the current moon's shape. Well, I'll keep that for a second. I mean, I don't love it, but we'll keep it for a second. We look at B, exploring some theories about the moon's shape and formation. Okay, well now that is a pretty good match for this up here. Moon not round like other moons, something happened. Okay, something about the moon's shape. So B seems to be a pretty good match. I'm going to keep that guy. A, exploring various methodologies used to evaluate theories about the moon's shape and formation. Okay, so here so there's a few things. So C, determining the extent to which a second moon is responsible for the current moon shape. We're not actually determining the extent. That would be like a scientific paper, right? We're not getting any information about how much or how little it was responsible. And so that's kind of out of the scope of this passage. Okay, so determining the extent, no, it's not really doing that. It's just kind of showing us that there's some theories, right? It's not really evaluating one or the other. Exploring some theories about the moon's shape and formation, that's pretty good because again, we're just proposing these theories, but how does that compare to A? These two are very similar, except one says exploring some theories about the shape and formation. The other says exploring methodologies used to evaluate theories about the moon's shape and formation. Ooh, which one's better? They're real similar. Well, B is better because are we exploring the methodologies that were used to determine what was the best way? No, all we're doing is we're looking at a couple theories about the moon's shape. We're not evaluating which way was better or anything like that. We're just proposing theories. Okay, the answer to this guy's B. All right, moving on from there. Common wrong answer types. This is one of the most useful skills that you can practice on the GRE is that there are answer types that just smell bad. And you do enough questions over time, you start to just kind of recognize like, oh, that's one of those questions. And for me, one of those types is these ones that have to do with time, where they bring up a prior or in the future or historically or something. They try to take a perfectly decent answer and then they pin on an extra little detail about time that makes the whole answer wrong. Okay, but anyway, so you do enough of these problems, you start to see what they look like. Okay, so a few of these that are very common. Lack of support. Wrong answers commonly make claims that don't have any identifiable support from the statements in the passage. Those are very similar to out of scope. These bring in new information that may not even be related to the ideas discussed in the passage, but that may be, but are not actually relevant or necessary. Okay, again, you are a robot, you are going to infer nothing. Out of scope, they're too broad. Okay. Here, they make claims that don't have identifiable support. One of the most common lack of direct support types is too extreme. Things that say always or never. Too extreme, or they make a false claim about time. So I'll just write time. Okay, those are typical lack of direct support questions, or wrong answer types. Okay, too broad. Answers the wrong question. Some answers may be completely supported by the passage, but answer a different question than the one asked. Okay, yeah, so they can make a true statement, but just be careful that you're actually answering the question they're asking you. And then combine correct and incorrect information. This is called the one wrong word answer. For these last two types, I want to underline the fact that people fret a lot about reading the reading comprehension passage, and then they don't read the answers carefully. That's backwards. You can be lazy about reading the passage. You have to be extremely careful about reading the questions and the answers. Why? because the passages are pretty straightforward. The questions are where they're trying to trick you, okay? And so it's very, if you have to, read the passage less carefully, but you want to read every single word of your questions. And because they could take a perfectly good answer type and make it wrong by putting in one wrong word, okay? All right, so moving on to this passage. This is a little bit longer. Got 2 minutes on this guy. I'll say 2.5 minutes on this one. But at the end, it's going to ask you what is the main idea. And actually, hold on, the new slide, I think, yeah, we've got it all on the slide. Great. Cool. So you got 2.5 minutes on this one to read. And then at the end of 2.5 minutes, I will put up the poll and you can vote from there. Okay. 2.5 minutes and your time starts now. Okay, that's 2 minutes. You got 30 seconds left. Okay, I'm going to launch the poll. Okay, we've got about 2/3 of you voting. Anybody else want to get in there? 2/3, 2/3, anyone else, anyone else? 67%. Okay, got 3/4 there. Okay, I'm going to close the poll, share the results. Okay, so you can see we've got a whole range of answers once again. A and E were the most popular choices. And if you picked A, good for you, the answer is A. So I agree, A and E are the most tempting of all of them. But let us go to our strategy of reading the introduction. So we read the introduction and we find out that in the 1880s, electric lighting, telephone communications, and mass transit marked the rise of modern cities in the US. Okay, this is going to be about how technology marked rise of modern cities. Cool. Arc lighting replaced dirty gas lighting, 90-foot poles, blah, blah, blah. 50,000 people traveled to work every day on its elevated railroads. Commuter trains snaked into the city from outlying areas. So once again, technology, including lights, trains, and telegraphs. Cool. All right, so then I'm going to read the topic sentences here. Okay, so the topic sentence of the middle paragraph. On March 12th, 1888, this activity ground to a halt when the worst storm in New York City had ever known paralyzed the East Coast for 2 days. Okay, so this is going to be about big storm happened, froze transit. Okay. Finally, we get to the conclusion. The conclusion's real long here. So prior to the natural disaster, New York City had considered building an underground railway modeled on London's underground. Okay, but now I'm going to skip to the conclusion because this is a very long conclusion, long ending paragraph. A New York Times editorial demanded a rapid transit system that could not be made inoperable by storms and the underground placement of all electric wires. Hard-hit Boston began building the nation's first subway 7 years later. Around that time, a referendum finally approved the allocation of public funds for a subway system in New York, but construction did not begin until 1900. Both Boston and New York buried their power and communication lines. Okay, so big storm happened, froze transit. Eventually, cities sorted it out, right? And by cities, I mean New York and Boston. Okay, so that's it. I'm not going to read anything else in this passage. I'm just going to go with that for now, okay? Because then I won't get confused by any extra details thinking that they are the main idea, when in fact we are only interested in the main idea. So coming over here, the author of this passage is primarily concerned with, I'm looking for something that has to do with technology marking the rise of modern cities and possibly this storm. Okay, so the least popular choice was C. Nobody picked C, so we won't go because there's no mention of corruption. I mean, this just comes out of nowhere, right? Frequently there will be one answer choice where you're just like, huh? That's what C is. All right, the next least popular was resolving a dispute about the order of Boston's and New York's construction processes. No, why not? Because Boston isn't even mentioned until the end of the passage, okay? So that's not what it's about. It's talking about New York City up until the very end, so not D. Next least was B, contrasting the participation in subterranean travel with the experience of elevated railroad transportation. Okay, so this is what it's like to ride a subway versus a train. And then, again, this I think is just a matter of interpreting this answer choice. Contrasting, yeah. And comparing participation with experience is a little bit weird, but in any case, this is about what it's like to ride a subway versus what it's like to ride a railroad. No, this is about technology and the rise of cities and then a big storm. So this is not what's mentioned in the first paragraph, okay? A and E are left. A says, explaining how a city's experience of a weather disaster originated the idea of an underground transit system and subterranean utility lines. Okay, possible. E, discussing the impact of a massive snowstorm on urban development in certain 19th century American cities. Okay, so here's the thing. I think E is in most ways a better and more appealing answer, but certain 19th century American cities is too broad. Okay, that's not the author's primary purpose. They're not talking about the impact of a massive snowstorm on certain development in 19th century American cities. What they are doing is talking about New York. They're explaining how that city's experience of a disaster caused them to develop subways. Okay, we're interested in New York City. The only reason we're at all confused is because down here in the last two lines they mentioned Boston. Remember, we're not concerned with that. We're concerned with if it's not in the first paragraph, it's not the answer. So that's why A is better, even though E I think does look looks more appealing. A is the answer. Okay, so moving on from there. Frank Lloyd Wright. You got a minute and a half on this one, and your time starts now. That's a minute. You have 30 seconds. Okay, that is a minute 30. Let me launch the poll. Okay, that's 2/3. Okay, with 2/3, I'm going to close the poll. Okay, 70%. There we go. Share the results. So you can see that the most popular answer choice here was B. And B is correct. You're in the group that chose B. Let me hide the poll. All right, so how do we then end up with B? So this is a passage about Frank Lloyd Wright. So we look at when Frank Lloyd Wright launched his architectural practice in Chicago at the dawn of the 20th century, he instigated a revolutionary experiment that would definitively establish him as the most innovative architect in American history. So what's this about? Frank Lloyd Wright is most innovative architect in US history. That's what this is going to be about. Okay, I'm going to skip down to the end here and say, characterized by bold horizontal lines, low pitched roofs, long bands of windows, blah, blah, blah. Wright's work strove to harmonize interior and exterior spaces by modulating light effects and utilizing rough-hewn native wood and rock. And so then it's going to be stuff about his style. Okay, cool. So the author's point is that this is a very, very innovative architect. Then he goes into some stuff about his style. All right, so nobody picked E, so we won't worry about that one. C and D. Is this author advocating for increased prevalence of Frank Lloyd Wright's architectural style? He's not. In no time does he say we need more of it. So again, we can just look at advocating for increased prevalence. Just look at that part of the answer, and it's wrong just based on those few words. Okay, detailing the impacts of the Prairie School. Okay, this is only a little paragraph. It's not detailing the impacts of anything. It's telling what the style was, but it's not detailing the impacts. So once again, we can just eliminate those based on the first few words. So now we're left with A and B, contrasting the predominant styles of architecture in two eras in US history, or B, describing the unique characteristic of Frank Lloyd Wright's architectural style. Which one is more like the very first sentence, the opening? It is B. This is about Frank Lloyd Wright and his style. It does mention the Prairie School versus the Victorian styles, but the first sentence makes it very clear that this is a passage about Frank Lloyd Wright, and that's what we should stick to. Yeah. Rebecca knows the background on this one, but still got it right. Good for you. Yeah, good. Good ability to block it out is key when you know something about this. I've actually listened to a lot of podcasts about Frank Lloyd Wright recently. For whatever reason. So cool. All right, so that one, the answer was, shoot, I circled it. It was B. There we go. Okay, so moving on from there, got a couple more. We've got a couple more practices. All right, so we've got one about Gustav Eiffel and then another one about Las Meninas. So we're keeping in the art and architecture theme here. So you've got a minute and a half on this one about Eiffel, and your time starts now. Okay, so that is minute 30. Let me launch the poll. This is a very sneaky one, I think. Well, I think we're doing better on this than normal. Okay, so I'm going to close the poll, share the results. You can see that A was the most popular. E was next most popular. E is actually the answer here. And I know A looks good, so we'll focus on why it is E, not A. Because yeah, A is a very tempting one, I think. So here's the deal with Eiffel. We're going to look at the introduction paragraph, and we're going to see, severely criticized by French intellectuals in 1889 when it was built, the Eiffel Tower's iconic structure is now viewed as elegant and ingenious. Okay, so Eiffel Tower, once hated, now loved. Keep reading. Gustave Eiffel's idea of architectural beauty was based on efficiency. He sought to construct something that had the greatest possible strength and height using the least amount of material. With the design of the Eiffel Tower, the famous French engineer did exactly what he intended to do, exposing the skeleton of his masterwork and in doing so revealing its internal harmony and integrity. The tower is 324 meters tall, yet all of its iron could be melted down into a ball only 12 meters in diameter. So in other words, major engineering accomplishment. This author wants to tell us not just that it was, you know, something that people used to hate, now they love it, but that it's a big engineering accomplishment. Okay. Debates among engineers and aficionados regarding why Eiffel created this tower the way he did yielded two potential underlying mathematical theories. Okay. Mathematical theories may have influenced design. Okay. All right, now I'm going to read the rest of that paragraph. That sounds boring. So I'm going to move on to the conclusion. The tower is comprised of a series of ever smaller X-shaped beams known as trusses, forming a crisscross design that relies on the intrinsic structural strength of rigidity and triangles. Okay, so special structure relies on triangles. Oh. Triangles, sorry, to make it strong. And then finally, indeed, an iteration of this design gives human bones and bamboo stalks their strength. Contemporary critics thought they were slighting Eiffel when they said his tower looked like a skeleton. Instead, they saw it for what it was intended to be. Okay, so yeah. Okay, so what we got here when we boil this all down, nobody picked B, so we won't look at B. C and D. Present cultural linguistic theories were discovered in historic archives. There's no mention of that. They're trying to like throw complicated words at you to confuse you, but no, there's no mention of cultural linguistic theories or archives. That one's out as well. D, contrast several different principles concerning the structural integrity evident in nature. This doesn't mention Eiffel or the tower, so that's definitely not the primary purpose of the passage. So now we're down to A and E, and I agree. A, trace how critics' opinion of the Eiffel Tower have changed in its construction. And if you were just reading the first sentence, that would be okay. But if you look at all of the summary information, so not just the first sentence, which we summarized as once hated, now loved, but then also major engineering accomplishment, mathematical theories may have influenced design, and special structure relies on triangles to make it strong. That's how we end up at E. Definitely you have to acknowledge that math is part of the author's purpose in writing this. He wanted to talk about why math was an important part, math and engineering. So the answer here is E, even though A is tempting. Okay, finally, we have one more question on Las Meninas, the Velázquez painting. So you've got a minute and a half on this guy. I'll take 2 minutes on this one. And at the end of 2 minutes, I will put up the poll and we'll be done. So 2 minutes, your time starts now. That's a minute. You have a minute left. Okay, that's 2 minutes. I'm going to launch the poll. Okay, let's see. So we got how many of you voting? So 58% of you have voted. Anyone else? Anyone else? Okay, I will close the poll, share the results. Cool, so it looks like the majority of people picked A. The next most popular answer was D. So if you are in the group that picked D, good for you, the answer is D. All right, so why D? Camera's off, turn the camera back on. Let's look at our introduction and see what we got. So our introduction tells us that Diego Velázquez was a 17th century Spanish painter and the leading artist in the court of King Philip IV. He created an enigmatic painting. Okay, so Velázquez, famous painter, made a famous enigmatic painting. Art historians and cultural critics have endlessly debated the relationship of illusion to reality in the Velázquez masterpiece Las Meninas, that's the name of the painting, completed in 1656. Some scholars have suggested that Las Meninas was the first modernist painting because it breaks from the idea that reality is entirely subjective. Possibly first modernist painting. And this whole idea about it breaks from the idea that reality is entirely subjective, that's just GRE stuff. Like, who knows what that even means? We don't need to know what that means in order to answer the questions. Okay, so that's cool. So then we move on to the topic sentence of the next. In this interpretation, Las Meninas presented a new way of thinking about art that complicated traditional painterly representation with its use of movement, mirrors, screens, layers within the art images interior and exterior, and the inclusion of the artist himself both looking into and out of the canvas. Blah, 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 blah. Again, they're just like trying to saddle you with all this like art terminology. We don't care. All we care about is that different interpretations of painting exist. Okay? We've got this thing about Foucault, and there's this thing about Joseph Tanky or whatever. It's just, this is just a paragraph about different interpretations. Cool. Finally, the painting portrays a large room in a Spanish palace. Okay, it's just going to tell us what the painting looks like. And then finally, we'll skip down to the conclusion, the last few sentences here. According to art historian Leo Steinberg, these compositional elements create a reciprocal encounter with the spectator, allowing the painting to transcend the realm of the static object. Again, that's just like blah, 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 blah. Don't take time trying to decode what that means. You don't need to know. Focusing on Velázquez's arresting self-portrait in the implied company of the royal couple, scholar Svetlana Alpers theorizes that Las Meninas was his assertion of the nobility of art in an era when it was disparaged as a craft. Okay. That last sentence sounds like Velázquez elevated art, craft to art. So we come away from this summary with the idea that he made this famous painting. A lot of people interpret it a lot of different ways, and it's very important. That's pretty much what we need to know to answer the question, because that is the author's main idea. All the stuff about extra like subjective reality, and just don't even waste your time trying to understand what that means. unless you naturally understand what it means, in which case, good for you. That's a real gift. Anyway, so I'm just going to look at this idea that it's a famous painting and lots of interpretations exist. A, analyzing compositional elements in portraiture. Okay, well, we have to give that one some consideration because there is all this stuff about what the painting looks like. Resolving a dispute regarding artistic representation. It doesn't resolve a dispute, once again, right? It doesn't. It gives you several people's opinions, but it doesn't resolve anything. Delineating several different eras in art history. No, not really. It mentions that it might be the first modernist painting, but that's not the author's intent. The author's intent is to talk about Velázquez and this famous painting, Las Meninas. Okay. Discussing interpretive approaches to a painting. Well, that's true. It definitely spends a lot of time talking about interpretations. In this interpretation, some have interpreted it as the first modernist painting. So this one is definitely tempting. E, summarizing the merits of specific painting techniques. No, it's definitely not doing that. Okay. So what makes D better than A in this case? Analyzing compositional elements in portraiture. First off, it's not about portraiture, it's about one painting, and the painting isn't even a portrait. The painting is a bunch of different figures, okay? So that's why this is being too broad. And not even terribly accurate because Las Meninas isn't a portrait, okay? So anyway, so that's why that one's out, it's too broad. D, discussing interpretive approaches to a painting. Yes, it is most certainly doing that. All right, so that is all the examples that I have. I'm going to call Andy back, and he's going to do some more talking and answer whatever questions you have. I will be lurking in the background, like the lurking lurker that I am. And what is up on the screen right now is an example of what in the course we will do at the end of every lesson.
All right, I'm back. Guys, hopefully you took a lot away from this session today. If you did, you're going to learn so much more in our courses. At this time, if you have any questions, feel free to type them into the question box. Yeah, good question. So Tom wants to know how many practice tests you should take. I would say take at least 3. Definitely take one at the beginning of your studies, take one about a month out, and take one about maybe 2 weeks away from the exam. The reason is because those not only will allow you to simulate the real conditions that you're going to face on the test, and especially simulating the time component of the test, which makes it more comfortable every time that you take it. It's also going to help you to know where you stand and guide you in, telling you what you need to focus on with the limited time that you have to prepare for the exam. I really do recommend every time you're practicing. Now, it's good to do as much practice as possible. But when you're able to simulate what you're going to face on the exam, and that means if you're able to practice questions on the computer, that's great. If you're able to time yourself, that's really great. Students who have, even students who don't have an issue with test anxiety, will tell you that the more that you practice the timing of the exam, the more comfortable you get, and the more you're able to focus on the content of the exam rather than the structure of the exam or the format or how much time you have left. And that's really important when you're taking this thing. Good, so any other questions, feel free to type them into the question box. I'll stay after a few minutes and answer any of them that come up if I don't respond to you right now while I'm talking. Some frequently asked questions that we get about the GRE. The first is, how long do I need to prep for the GRE? So you're going to get a lot of different answers here. Most people will say somewhere between 2 and 6 months. Really, it depends on how much time per week you're able to study. So as I said before, take a practice test early, get an idea of what your baseline score is, and then you should do a little bit of homework, figure out what your target is going to be. What score do you need in order to get into your top programs, and then also from there, set a consistent study schedule. So, one of the nice things about our courses is that we're going to cover every topic that you need to know for this exam. We're going to take all the guesswork out of it. We're going to make sure we save you a little bit of time that way, because you don't have to worry about trying to figure out what's important and what's not. We're going to cover what's important, and our instructors have a ton of experience. So students end up saving a lot of time when they go through us. How long are GRE scores valid? So if you took the test after July 1st, 2016, your score is going to be valid for 5 years. Do business schools have a test preference? That's a preference between the GRE and the GMAT. I know some of you might be, trying to decide which of those two tests you're going to use for your MBA applications. The good news is that according to surveys, at least 8 out of 10 MBA programs have no test preference. So that means they're gonna view GRE and GMAT equally. But the important thing is to look, do your homework, figure out the schools that you're targeting, do they accept GRE scores? And that leads to our next question, which is which grad institutions accept GRE scores? So we have a full list here. If you download this PDF or you download the slides, you're gonna have a link to the PDF here that shows all the programs that accept GRE scores. All right, upcoming courses. So based on what your needs are, we have different courses to fit them. I would say that our most popular options are our complete hybrid option and our complete live option. Both of those guarantee that you're going to gain at least 5 points studying with us. They all have 4 small group tutoring hours. They all have 24/7 chat support. I'll talk in a second about the difference between the complete live and the complete hybrid course. We also have our 165 club. That's one that if you are interested, you're going to have to fill out an application for that because we only work with students who, we feel very confident we can help them to break 165 in each section. So the complete hybrid course, how does it work? So all of these courses are going to be 20 hours of instruction. It's broken down into 8 classes. With the hybrid course, we upload those sessions so that you can view them at your own pace. And as you're viewing those, you're going to have relevant homework assigned from our mobile and web platforms and from the ETS official guide to the GRE. Now, while you're viewing the lessons, while you're doing the homeworks, any questions that come up, you can feel free either to email them to your coach and to your instructor for the course, or you can save them for the small group tutoring hours. Like I said, with both the live and hybrid options, you have 4 of those small group tutoring hours. Usually it's 2 to 4 students. We turn the microphones on. You get to ask any questions that you have. It's a great way for you to work a little bit more closely with your instructor. So our hybrid courses are popular because not only are they very flexible and viewing them, at your own schedule, but also they offer a ton of support. In addition to your instructor for this course, you have a coach, Julie. She has 15 years of experience. She's a great resource for any questions about the GRE, any logistical questions you have, and she's going to be tracking your progress in the apps throughout the course. The only difference between the hybrid course and the live course is that instead of those 8 sessions being at your own pace, they're completely live. So when they're on weeknights, they're at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, and on the weekends, they're at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. When you sign up for the course, you're getting lifetime access to our mobile and web platforms. You're going to have our 7 full-length computer adaptive tests, which are a great feature to help you know where you stand as you're getting ready for this thing. You're getting full lifetime access to all the recordings with either the hybrid or the live course, so you can go back, rewatch anything that you missed, go back, if there's anything you're struggling with, you want to dig a little bit deeper into, you can rewatch those recordings at any time. So that's a really great feature as well. You have no expiration date when you're studying with us. If you're willing to put in the hard work, we're here for you. So here is our upcoming schedule for the 4th and 5th weeks of May. You can see that our next complete live course is going to be starting on May 30th. That's a Wednesday, Saturday, 6-week course. So as I mentioned before, that's Wednesday nights at 8 p.m., Saturdays at 11 a.m., and that's going to cover every topic that you need to know. We also have our complete hybrid courses starting several times a week. We have 4-week, 6-week, and 8-week options. The 4-week options, we upload 2 sessions per week. With the 8-week option, we upload 1 session per week. Other than that, everything is the same. All the other features are exactly the same. Here is an example of one of our hybrid courses. This is an 8-week hybrid course. All of our hybrid courses are led by Sarah. Sarah is a 99th percentile instructor that you saw today. She has thousands of hours of experience, and students really do love her classes. They love that she gets them asking lots of questions, and that's really important for these courses. So this is an 8-week course. you can see that for this particular one, we upload the sessions on Wednesdays. You see here that it says 9 a.m., 12 p.m., 8 p.m., 11 p.m. You can view them once we upload them at 9 a.m. Eastern time. You can view those sessions at any time, not only throughout the day, but after. Okay, so don't feel like you have to be on any certain schedule. It's totally whatever works best for you. When you're ready to watch them, you view those sessions. We have a special discount just to say thank you for attending today. Any webinar attendee can use the code webinar200 at checkout. It's going to give you $200 off our complete hybrid or our complete live options. So it's just all capital letters, webinar200, and that's going to give you $200 off. Finally, why Ready For? Why not somebody else? The reason is because we're not just creating courses here at Ready For. We're building technology. We're combining that technology with the best instructors in the entire industry and the best content. And we're doing this in order to help you to learn both faster and smarter, maximizing your potential, helping you to hit your target scores more effectively so that you can get into the schools of your dreams. We embrace digital technology here at Ready For better than any other company, and that enables us to bring the experience to you wherever you are, whenever you're able to practice. We know how important it is to be flexible for our students. We're leveraging millions of hours of data of students who have been using our apps, and so we've built this learning algorithm that really helps you to study the things that you really need to focus on. When it's time for you to be doing your homework, you're doing it in our app. We're giving you a full score breakdown. What are the areas that you're stronger in? What are the areas that you need to focus on? Because it's not just about doing a million practice questions, right? It's about doing the questions that you really need to be focusing on in the areas that you need to continue working on, because no one has time to do a million practice questions. Everything that we do here at Ready For is done online so that we're able to do it a lot more cheaply than other companies. This makes us the most affordable, top-rated test prep company in the industry, and we don't have to worry about renting out college classrooms for in-person courses. We don't have to worry about printing out paper-bound textbooks. All of these are things that not only are more effective for you, but they enable us to charge hundreds and hundreds of dollars less than these other companies. And because we only work with the best instructors in the industry, know that you're always going to be in good hands. Finally, we love what we do here at Ready For. So we are a company that is founded on the idea of helping students get into their dream schools. And I love hearing back from students who tell us how our apps and our courses have helped them to get scores that they never thought that they would get, so that they could get into their dream master's programs. And it's something that is incredibly rewarding for me and for all of us here at Ready For. So I would love to work with you. I would love to show you what we've built to help you get into your top school. If you are interested but you want a little bit more information, feel free to set up a call with me. I'm going to send an email tomorrow. It's going to have this link. You can set up a 15-minute meeting. We could talk a little bit more about what you're doing to prepare for the test. We could talk about your strengths and weaknesses, scheduling, but also if you want to hear about our instructors, our courses, or finding the best plan that's going to fit your needs, then this is for you. So definitely I recommend setting up a time to talk with me. I've worked with a lot of students in the past and helped a lot of students, and I would love to help you as well. So make sure you take advantage of our quant and verbal webinars. We would love to see you back again. We would really love to see you in our courses. If you have any other questions, if there's anything I can help you with, feel free to reach out to me. Please don't hesitate. If you have anything that you want to put in the question box now, I'm going to stay after for a couple more minutes. But other than that, I think that's it. So best of luck, everybody. Thanks for coming out today, and reach out if there's anything I can help you with. Thanks, everybody.